Honestly, I don't know what the rules are. How are these Jason ones being spawned?
Like new Jasons are being spawned, but not new worlds to spawn them.
Where are all the Jason 2s?
Hello and welcome to Road Goes Ever On and On. Today, guest host Dawn and I are talking about Dark Matter Episode 8. So spoilers are ahead. And if you're enjoying our videos, then a like would be appreciated. If you don't want to miss a single one of our discussions, then just be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon for notifications. And with that, let's talk about the rules
Okay.
in this.
Honestly, I don't know what the rules are.
Okay. I feel like I kind of have a grasp of some of them, but also there's aspects of it that are very contradictory to me, more so. Like, not like, oh, I can't understand, but more like, I think this doesn't make sense based off this other thing you said.
Okay.
So, but first, do you have questions or just straight up don't understand?
I have questions.
Okay. Question number 1.
Where are all the Jason 2s?
Where?
That's my first question. There are Jason 1s, there are Jason 2s. But before we get to that,
Yeah.
how are these Jason 1s being spawned? Like, what causes it? Is it whenever they go through a new door? Or so they all have the same memories? Like, they all have the same family memories. They get kidnapped by Jason 2. They go to his world, and they escape with Amanda, and they're in the box.
Yep.
So Jason 1 goes through the very first door from the box.
So I do think that they did point out in this episode that the Jasons are being spawned in the box, I believe they kind of said, and based off of every decision that is made, and that once one of those spawns, so there's a decision tree. And every time a decision happens, you know, do I go through this door or this door? Do I think of this or this? There's a split. There's now 2 Jasons. And then from those 2 Jasons, each of those could have 2 decisions. So it's like that branches to 4 Jasons, that branches to 8 to 16.
That makes no sense. It's like to me, I cannot wrap my head around every decision spawns a Jason. Like, you open the door with your right hand instead of your left hand, Jason.
Yes.
You decide to sit here instead of there, Jason. You say this instead of that. Like, sometimes it's not even a decision. It's just like, this is what I'm doing. It's not like a conscious decision that spawns one. It's just, I'm going to do this. It just seems like there would be a lot of Jasons.
So honestly, I get that part. That to me fits with the idea of a multiverse, where they're with the idea of a multiverse, they're, anything is a possibility, anything, including crazy things like dinosaur worlds. I know I keep beating that drum. I talk too much about it. I still want dinosaur worlds. Anything from like crazy things like that to much more mundane things like choosing a different color sock. I was going to put on the black socks, but then today I was like, oh, let's get kind of crazy. But it gets even further than that of if one version of you instantly thinks of doing different socks, another version of you takes a few moments and is like, I have kind of an important business meeting. Is that going to make me look bad? So that's the multiverse.
Is wild.
Anyways, we'll come back to this.
Okay.
We'll come back to this. So I get that part.
Okay.
Here's the part I don't get. It seems to me like new Jasons are being spawned, but not new worlds to spawn them, which that to me goes against the multiverse. Okay. Because they're all converging on this one.
Right. Well, that's their history. That's their backstory.
That's their shared split in the tree.
Correct.
Like, you can all trace them back to this moment that they were taken by Jason 2. Theoretically, it seems like all of these are Jason 1s.
Right. Right. It's just a lot. And like, where are everybody else? But where are all the Amandas? Like, surely some of the Amandas must have traveled with the Jasons. So
yes.
Where are the Amandas?
Yeah.
Where are the Jason 2s? Where are the Ryans? They went in the box. Where are the Laytons? They went in the box.
But once again, man, maybe each of us have like a very different thing we're fixated on. I'm not cool with the fact we're not seeing the other ones, like Jason 2s and Ryans and Amandas and Laytons. Shouldn't they have worlds? This box has infinite doors, so there should, if a new Jason is spawned, like I don't understand the idea of like Jason splitting, but not worlds splitting. And if that's the case, then like you said, Jason 2 should be splitting, and there should be like a whole wave of Jason 2s coming back.
Unless they went back to their world. But they shouldn't, because if they're all following the same backstory, they should all want to get to this world.
Yes, most of them have. And we definitely saw that they, even if they have divergences in specifics in the way that they think, they at least have a shared basic way that they think. You know, like that scene in the bar where one of the Jasons said, "I thought about killing him here," and the other one's like, I dug the grave. Yeah. Like that really shows that they have the same kind of thought processes, even if they have splits.
Yeah, that's very important. So to come back to it, not entirely sure. Like the whole multiverse thing, I know it's very popular the last few years, and we've watched Loki, you know, which has the multiverse. We've watched, I'm sure, other movies and shows that have the multiverse.
I was about to say
Doctor Strange and
a bunch of the Marvel ones recently have gotten that. But then also we watched Everything Everywhere All at Once. Yes. I know that was weird for you. I loved it. And then I know you haven't watched it, but Mark and I have. Rick and Morty very much is multiverse heavy. So it's been a pretty big thing that I think is an interesting, distinct thing from time travel.
Yeah.
And actually on that point, I read an article just yesterday about this episode, and it described this as a time travel show, which I thought was the worst way to describe it.
Okay.
And I can see kind of some confusion, because I think the splits are around time, you know, so it's like when you have a split further back in time, that causes, you know, when you have a decision that causes like a split, but you can't travel back to that time.
Okay.
And I think they're very different. You know, you have, like with time travel, you have things like paradoxes. You know, you can't travel back in time, and if you travel back in time and kill your grandfather, what happens? Because now there's not somebody that can have you. And there's also consequences and moral quandaries. Like, well, if you could only go back to a certain point in time, and that's when Hitler was a baby, would it be morally okay to kill Hitler, knowing that he's probably going to do, like, in your timeline, he did these things, but he definitely hasn't done these things yet.
There's a Tom Cruise TV show about this? Is it Tom Cruise? Maybe it's not.
Movie?
Maybe.
Like Minority Report?
Minority Report.
Where
it's like you're trying to arrest people before they do the
for
things.
crimes that they have. Yes. Yeah, that gets into that kind of moral versus multiverse is very different. If you accidentally kill somebody, you can't go back and fix it. That person is dead. You kill your grandparent, they're dead. You can't go back in time and be like, let me fix that, you know?
Right. Okay.
But it's also interesting because it means that there can be things that never happened, you know, like these crazy splits, and it can edit. So I think that there's very interesting differences.
Do you think someone who, well, I guess that's me, but I was going to say somebody that doesn't understand the whole multiverse thing can appreciate this show just for what it presents?
I mean, I think you're actually it'd be better for me to ask you that. My thought is, and I actually asked Mark kind of a similar question as far as, you know, do you think this show will continue to another season? Mm-hmm. Because we watched Constellation together, and that was recently canceled.
Right.
And honestly, I think that while I have a lot of issues with this show, I think it is more appealing to general audiences than a show like Constellation.
I think the idea of time travel is like sexy in pop culture, you know, like it's very common. Like,
yes.
You know, you can see it across multiple types of movies. Like it's popular with the people, you know, as opposed to Constellation was a lot of.
It was confusing from the get-go.
Like it had by the end when you realize there's like, it's switching back and forth, like that's super cool. But you had to get to the end unless you were really keen and like caught those things early, which some people did. Like
3 episodes deep, it was very confusing, and that's a big turnoff for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think this one is much more approachable, but if you pay attention to it too closely, I feel like you notice a lot of issues, which I think is a turn. So I think like to general audiences that aren't really pouring in on the details, I think this could be a very interesting show.
Yeah. Like, they say superposition, and I have no idea what that means. But, but it sounds like
Yes,
something really important. So I'm like, oh, man, that must be important. I don't know what it means. But
And it sounds authoritative. Like,
Yes.
oh, that's a good... It makes sense.
This is legit.
Versus when I heard it, and it's like, it puts the person in superposition, but it doesn't seem like the person is in superposition. It seems like the worlds are like...
Right.
All these... yeah.
Right. And having a box in every world, that part, it's like, no one else notices this, because not all these Jasons are in tech. So
Yeah.
somebody had to build it, but it was his original idea. Like, that's why he has the little 1x1 box. That
Yes.
was,
He had
they
a
scaled it.
smaller version
Anyways, we digress.
that put ants through this whole thing.
Yes.
Think about that.
Yes.
Think about what kind of mind fuck ants went through.
Maybe that's why there's
with
so
Jason
many ants
Dessen.
in the world. Maybe that's why there's so many ants.
Okay, so I think it is safe to say that we don't know what the rules are.
Correct.
We would like some clarifications.
Yes. And we want to
And-
know where the Jason 2s are.
We want that seriously. Yes, there are so many Jason 1s in this episode that are all converging on the same spot, and not one, as you point out, not just Jason 2, Layden, Amanda,
Right. Ryan.
Ryan,
The whole gang.
anybody,
And anyone who went in the box earlier, like
Right.
when they were testing it. So
Yeah.
where are those people? But anyways, so you want to talk about the Jason 1s?
I do want to talk about the Jason 1s.
Go.
Jason 1,
Right.
Jason Primes, however you want to kind of
Yeah.
whatever
All of
nomenclature.
All the single Jason 1s.
All
I guess
the-
they're not single, but
Okay, I was about to be getting in deep in the weeds, pulled back so I could separate those.
sorry, that was you not in the weeds earlier?
It wasn't me in the weeds. Okay, so Infinite Worlds.
Yes.
Infinite Worlds. So Infinite doesn't just go two ways, like past the zero, this way into the negatives and then way into the positives, infinitely in either direction. It goes infinitely within two fixed points. You can take two fixed points, like, for instance, Jason 1 and Jason 2, or the number 1 and 2, and there's an infinite amount of points between that. And you could take two fixed points in that. So it's like you have a decision leading to a Jason 1.1, and in between Jason 1 and 1.1, there's an infinite amount of possible. Like, that's infinity. And that's the way I think of kind of numbering them, even though I don't know where they come from. So I don't know which one is like a 1.1 and which one is like a 1.2.3.
1.2.3.
But that's the way I kind of think of them.
Okay.
But it's interesting that I feel like most of them had physical differences.
Yes. Well, they had different experiences.
Yes.
So, like, there was the one that had, like, at the bar, had the cut on his forehead and looked like he had stitches.
Yes.
Then there was the one at the college that had, like, a scarred face. I also noticed that some of them were wearing different color wedding bands.
Okay.
So our Jason one had that neutral color rubber band on his finger.
Yep.
But the Jason at the bar that he was sitting across from actually had a black band on. And we know that Jason 2 has the gold band. So,
Right.
like in the fight scene, it was easy to tell who was who. For me, the fight scene in the alley, because I could see the gold band. So I did think that was interesting.
It does feel like it's forcing you to focus on the worst way to differentiate people, like on a very surface level, what their physical differences are.
Right.
So there's scarred Jason, there's melty face Jason, or you could call him, limpy Jason. Was that right? That was the same. The one that went to the college.
Yes.
I wish they had very different outfits.
Some
so
of them
that
have
you
matching
didn't-
outfits.
So that's what I'm saying.
And some have, but some of the
But it would have made it easier to talk about them instead of using their physical appearance, because then I feel like I'm
being an asshole.
being an asshole. But it was interesting that many of these literally were scarred, and they even seemed inside scarred.
Yes.
Because to me, the way that it came off was that they were
Revengeful.
yes,
They were angry.
Yes.
Yes.
They didn't just want their life back, they wanted to exact revenge
Yes.
on Jason 2.
Yes.
And so they're like, I don't think our Jason got a weapon, and if he did, he certainly didn't use it. But
He did. He did.
we don't know.
I think he did.
He didn't use it. Versus
Okay.
some of the other Jasons are
packing.
and they're driving fast with stolen cars and you know like using screwdrivers to steal cars, like very very physical and very like I'm going to take back what is mine. They seem physically and emotionally scarred.
It's also got to be weird for them. Like, do they know that they're not the prime Jason? I don't know that they do, because they're all here to take back their life. So it's also got to be weird for them to see other Jasons. Like, our Jason was weirded out by finding another Jason.
Yes.
The Jason in the bar had kind of figured it out and knew how it was going on. But I imagine, like, when the two Jasons crash at the very end into each other, there's got to be some other Jasons that don't know that this is all happening just yet and are weirded out by the fact that there are a bunch of Jasons running around. I would be weirded out.
Also, I think that more of the Jasons should have been tipped off sooner, because
to what?
The fact that there's other Jasons, and therefore should have been amping up their plan to do it as quickly as possible, because at least two of them were in the same hotel and had, you know, we keep seeing Jasons running into each other, and I think that if multiple Jasons are in the same hotel and look similar to like the scene where they go to get the weapons, or the bar, where there would be these scenes where they would see this happen and realize, oh, this isn't good. If I'm going to make a move, I need to make it now. Which also makes me kind of feel like if the Jason that was successful at the end of this episode is our Jason, which emotionally I feel like it is.
He's so sensitive. He seems so different from all the other Jasons.
He's using his brain. The other ones are using their brawn. They're like stealing cars. They're threatening another Jason, saying, I will run over anything that gets in my way. He
was nice about it. He said, I don't want to hurt anybody like us, but nothing's going to stop me from getting my family back.
It was a nice threat, but it's still a threat.
Is that still making a threat?
That's a threat.
Yeah, that is the one thing that's weird, is that what we think of as Jason 1 is so different from the other Jasons.
Yes.
And is that because he is the original and he didn't end up in terrible worlds? It's hard because...
It really is hard.
Yeah, it's like, how did none of the other ones, in an infinite universe, how did none of the other ones think to draw Daniela out instead of trying to go to her and scaring her?
Not just that, but I think the really smart part is if they all have similar thoughts, then if you say, oh, I'm going to capture Daniela and I'm going to bring her to X place, everybody else is going to think of going to that same place. And so you wouldn't actually be safe there. Our Jason is the only one who used Daniela as a randomizer and said, you think of a place.
Yep. You pick the password, you pick the place.
You pick the password, you pick the place. Yes. You know, and I think that was a really smart way to make it so that the other Jasons won't be there. Even if another Jason was there, they wouldn't be able to come up with the right password.
Right.
Which once again highlights how different the other ones are. And I don't know if that's to try and say that the other ones are so scarred and he was the only one lucky enough to have had the best experience.
He can't be the only one in an infinite world. He can't be the only one.
That's how I feel.
So
that's how I feel.
But I do see your point. I did think the idea was clever to draw Danielle out.
Brilliant.
Like, the nicest way to get arrested. Smoke a cigar in a restaurant.
You know.
And would you be arrested for that? I don't. Maybe.
If Dawn comes in.
She'll arrest you for anything.
Dawns are bad people. Watch out for Dawns.
That felt like a threat.
You know, I actually thought that scene seemed out of character to me.
For the Jason?
For Jason, yeah. Okay. Because for me, it felt like a way to make you think that this isn't our Jason, that this is maybe a slightly more of a dick Jason.
Why?
Because I don't feel like our Jason is that rude, and smoking should be fine to get the police to come.
Okay.
But then he was intentionally being rude to everybody around him. It felt out of character.
To me, that felt like he was trying to, like, someone call the police, like, ASAP so he can get to Daniela, so he can get there and get Daniela to come. Like, it felt like he was purposely doing that to move the situation along. Because if he was nice about it, you know, they would reason with him. They would, you know, what's he supposed to say? Like, he wants to be arrested, right? So he can't be like, I'm sorry this is bothering you. I have to do this to get my wife to come get me. Yes. He can't let on that this is...
Okay.
For any other reason. Like, so he is trying to get arrested. Let's just get it over with so he can get Daniela to come, so he can put his plan into action.
And he might want...
Because time is limited.
Time is limited, yes.
There are Jasons everywhere.
Okay, yes.
So there are Jasons everywhere, which is one part of it.
Yes.
He feels that his family is in danger from Jason too, so that's another part of it. So he needs this plan to move quickly so he can be the first one to make contact with Daniela. Because what if he didn't know that another Jason wasn't trying the same thing? And if they make contact with her first, and, you know, they have the same memories.
Yeah.
So
I see it now, because especially when the manager says, you know, you're bothering the other patrons, and he stands up and asks if anybody else is bothered, and some people make it clear that they're kind of bothered.
Right.
And he just sits back down. That, to me, just seemed like a dickish move, but that is really escalating it.
Right.
Because now he's got it to a point where the people know that he knows that they don't want him there.
Right.
And he's still, so it's escalating the situation.
I mean, he's causing the restaurant to lose business. Like, the restaurant needs him out so that nobody else leaves. You know. Speaking of the scene at the end with the password at the bean, I'm sorry, but this was a part that was just kind of weird for me. Is Charlie has no idea that this is going on.
Yeah.
He has no idea. He knows his dad has been weird.
I was about to say.
He knows his dad has been weird.
He knows that something...
But he doesn't understand what is going on.
Yes.
Right? Daniela kind of has... She's met with Ryan. She found the injection thing. Like, she knows that there's something...
She has him... Yes. And she's had private conversations with him. And...
Correct.
Yes.
Whereas poor Charlie just has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So his mom's like, we gotta go now. Get in the car. We're going.
Right now. Yeah.
They crash into his dad, who he just saw at his house. They get into that car.
Yep.
That's the wrong dad. Then
and then that dad is like, we gotta go.
His dad gets hit by his dad. So there's a lot that just happened in Charlie's head. They get to the bean. There's another dad.
Yep.
And obviously Daniela and Jason, you know, share a password and everything's fine. Jason goes to hug Charlie, and at first Charlie's like just standing there, and then he hugs him back, which sentimentally it works. But if I had just seen, I don't know, 6 copies of my dad, I'm not sure that I would hug any of them until I know what's going on. Until someone explains themselves.
It works from Jason's perspective, but it doesn't necessarily work from Charlie's perspective. Right. It seems like he would just be staying there with his hands down, like, I don't...
What is happening?
What is going on? How do I have so many dads?
Yes. Yes. So, thought that was a little bit...
And can I get a new car from each of them? How does this work? Yeah, when Daniela accepts this reality that this might be her Jason, I did kind of wonder, as she realized that the Jason that started driving her in the car might be another Jason, why she didn't think, how do I know that this one isn't my Jason? Like, I know that the one at my house isn't my Jason because things haven't been lining up, but maybe I should be interviewing them.
But they're all going to have the same story.
Clearly not. You can ask about the house at the vacation. You can make up lies.
That was Jason too. He's not on the same branch. All the Jason ones are there.
Nobody took the time to explain to her that all of these are Jason ones.
Correct.
And that they will all have the same memory. So from her perspective,
that's true.
There's like, everybody's a different Jason, right?
I understand.
How do you know that you have your husband? How do you know that this isn't...
And maybe she thinks they're all Jason 2s, and he's the only Jason 1.
She didn't get that explained. Like,
but she knows that the Jason 1 that she's meeting, like, knows about the Christmas... knows about the Christmas trip.
Knows one thing.
Yeah.
How does she know that these others...
That's a valid point.
I would want a little bit more... That's a lot to take in.
Yes.
I would potentially just want to leave that situation and have some space to think versus being like,
Well,
I'm in a crazy situation, I'm going with you.
She did say we might not come when she was in the police station.
She did.
So I think that was her moment to think. And then she went home to the other Jason, not knowing that there were also infinite number of other Jasons. And so when she made the decision to go, that's when Jason.
Okay, so then she met another Jason in the car.
Yes.
And that Jason started to say the exact same story.
Correct.
That is not a Jason 2.
Correct.
That could be her Jason. And she bails on him.
Well, maybe her Jason wouldn't steal a car. Because there's a screwdriver in the ignition.
Her Jason would. All of them are Jason 1s. All of them are her Jason.
She doesn't know that.
I know. That's why I'm saying you got to ask more questions.
Wouldn't steal a car.
It's weird. That's a weird situation to be in.
Yeah, that is true. Jason 2 is very different from Jason 1 in terms of, or maybe not. I mean, he's killing Jasons left and right and leaving a trail of bodies.
Yes.
That are all genetically the same person.
And what is his game plan? He killed one of them and was still sticking it out in this world. I feel like at some point you gotta bail.
Well, and he was trying to go to. They were trying to leave. I mean, the first Jason he killed, he then proceeds to drag to his home unnoticed and wrap him in a tarp that he conveniently has. So who knows what he's going to do with that Jason? You know, I've seen Dexter. Who knows what he's going to do with that Jason to get rid of the evidence? It's not, and then the second Jason, it takes him by surprise, and they're in a college. Like, what's he supposed to do? So they're in an empty bathroom on an empty floor of a library. He puts him in the bathroom and he locks the door. So until it starts to smell, people won't come looking for him. I think that was, that's I think when that Jason started panicking.
Yeah.
Because he went home and he's like, we got to go now.
Yeah.
So I think he at that moment realized, obviously when he met the first Jason, maybe he realized, oh, the box I built is going to, I imagine he figured it out. He's a very intelligent man. He built this box. He has to know the ramifications of his box.
So at this point, you have an army of Jasons coming after you.
Yes.
Maybe he only knows of the one. He did seem scared that others were coming.
Yes.
Okay, so he's very worried about the consequences. I don't think it's safe to stay in this universe. How are you going to convince Charlie and Daniela to leave this universe? And even if you could convince them, convincing them to leave their life under duress seems like the absolute worst way to go into the box. To have two emotionally unstable people.
Jason 2 seems to be able to pick whatever world he wants. He's gone in there with Leighton. He's gone in there with Ryan. He
put
manages
tinfoil on their head and it just like suppress? But they went in
excited,
yes,
but naive about what.
And he like woosawed them. He's like, clear your thoughts for just 5 seconds. That's all I need to get through a door. 5 seconds. I think that's a little bit easier to do when you're excited than when you are
terrified.
Yes.
That's fair.
So to me, this seems like an awful idea. If you stay here, the cops will find you at some point.
Yeah.
But
you can make it a world. I mean, you can make it whatever you want it to be, right? If you just think about it. So, like, Charlie went to the skate park and tried to talk to that girl, and that girl shot him down, or the other guy showed up or something. That can be written into, like, the new world, where he's with the girl. I don't know. It's kind of like you can do whatever you want because all you have to do is write it out. I don't know. So overall, what are your thoughts? I know we still have one more episode left to see how they wrap it up, but what are your thoughts overall?
Overall, I don't love it. Overall, I think that if there is any of the shows that we have watched so far that deserves to be canceled, I would say that this one has so many plot holes.
Okay.
That I would say that this is the one that I see this potentially continuing. Versus, and I totally understand why audiences might have bailed on Constellation, and that wasn't even necessarily my favorite show. So I'm not saying bring back Constellation. It was the greatest thing ever.
It got better.
But it got so much better in the end. It just needed.
It took a while.
It took a while to get into it.
Yes.
And I think with a second season, they could have learned from their mistakes in season 1 and really come out with, like, based off of where they went in the end of the season, I think they could have learned from it, done a lot better. I think this one has a lot of plot holes. Honestly, not a huge fan. What about you?
It's hard watching shows with you. It's true. Because I appreciate shows for kind of what they're showing me, and I try not to put my own like thoughts into it and like and be like, where's this?
Yeah.
For the most part.
Weren't you the one that
Yeah,
was asking
I
where
was
Jason
just
2 was?
I was just about to say, unless it's blatant that something is wrong.
Okay. Yeah.
But I try to just like, we got into this in Constellation because you were talking about the science that they were saying was wrong, and I was like, I don't know, I'm gonna take their word for it. It's it's like fantasy, right? You tell me this elf family has this magic power, I'm just gonna say okay.
Okay. Yep.
So for me, not my favorite.
Okay.
But it had some action to it. It had some mystery to it. I'm okay with it. I would watch it, but can't wait for season 2.
It had a bunch of things, but I don't feel like it excelled at any one of them. So it had a little bit of action, like a person was shot point blank in the face. There was like the fight scene, the struggle between Jason 2 and one of the Jason primes that ended up losing his life. There was some of that, but not enough that it is really exciting action. There were some emotional beats, but not enough that it ever caused me to well up. There was some of the cool part of the multiverse where you have crazy worlds, but none of them were really crazy, and they definitely didn't spend a ton of money on cinematography to have like one wild world.
Right.
You're just a lot of them were seen from like from doorways. They did a lot of things, but none of them I feel they did really well.
You're mad because there weren't dinosaurs.
The intro, I don't think they nailed the intro. It wasn't a great song. That even when I'm not a huge fan of the intro, I will still sit through it.
We do. We watch the intros every time.
It's important.
There's a skip button for a reason, but we do not.
Somebody spent a lot of time and effort on that. It's supposed to set a certain, anticipation,
right,
feeling. That one, I didn't hate that one, but it was, that's where I feel across the board with this, where it's like, I don't hate the show by any stretch of the imagination, but there's nothing about it that gets me excited.
Fair enough. That's kind of how I
feel. Joel
feel.
Edgerton, I think, is the best, like the main character, Jason. I do like his performance, but it's the script he was given, whatever, is just, I do think he was good in it. I actually like the actors. I think I like all the actors. Amanda, Danielle, Ryan, Layden. I actually do like the actors in it. I just don't think that they were given the right material to do their thing.
Yeah, I can see that.
But with that, I think our journey has come to an end. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to join us next week for the final episode of Dark Matter. Also, Mark will be back. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next week.
Honestly, I don't know what the rules are. How are these Jason ones being spawned?
Like, new Jasons are being spawned, but not new worlds to spawn them.
Where are all the Jason 2s?